So I am so proud to introduce our last guest speaker, director Joseph Chun. Most people know Mr. Chun is a film director, but he is a lawyer who turned into a filmmaker. His latest documentary, Chosen, is a center on 5 Korean Americans who ran for US Congress in 2020. It received critical acclaim in both Korea and US. And also, he's the first feature documentary, Geronimo, is about story about Korean-Cuban revolutionary who led Cuban Revolution with Fidel Castro. This film has not only uncover the history of a Korean-Cuban community, but also this film sparkled the nationwide discourse on multiple meanings of a Korean diaspora. Please welcome Director Joseph Chun.
Hello, everyone. Pleased to be here. Thank you guys for sticking around. I think I'm the only thing standing in between you and the dinner. So I'll try to make this as engaging and entertaining as possible. So here we go. Why is forging a strong US-Korea relations important? Every once in a while, I get asked by the Korean government agencies to participate in this kind of talk. And I'm a rebel. I don't try to comply with the government requests to say nice things about the countries. I don't think if the US-Korea relations has to be stronger and thus an important task for our generation, I don't think it should arise from our nationalistic sentiment, right? I think if it should be important for our own discourse, I think it's because it's universally a good thing. And it benefits not only the two countries, but our strong relations serves as a beacon of hope, not only for the people in both countries, but for others to emulate, right? And in that regard, I want to talk about what I think should be the fundamental basis of the narrative in talking about Korea's relations, which is a diasporic narrative. And I've single-handedly just came up with the term or the definition of such, which I term it as a non-nationalistic, humanistic, universal stories where individuals or groups whose foreignness, alienness, marginality, hybridity, multiplicity, and diversity becomes the main driver and essence of story. Again, if forging a stronger US-Korea relations is important, I don't think it should be out of a nationalistic obsession or sentiments, but out of a diasporic consciousness and diasporic narrative. And please allow me to elaborate such concept using various different visuals in the next 20 minutes or so. So why am I talking about diasporic narrative? 7 years ago, actually, let me just show you a video. Hi, my name is Joseph Chun. I'm a New York attorney, currently producing and directing a film called Geronimo. A year ago, I went to Cuba on a whim to explore the country before American tourists and capitalism poured in. And of course, wanting to enjoy the beach, drinking rum, and smoking cigars. But the lady who came to pick me up at the airport from a hostel I booked several days ago just happens to be fourth-generation Korean-Cuban, whose father was the legendary Geronimo Lim, Im Eun-jo in Korean. That's where everything started. Although Geronimo passed away in 2006, I got to meet Geronimo's wife, daughter, son, and other family members who told me about the incredible journey Geronimo and his family had to go through in the past 100 years in Cuba. For instance, Geronimo went to law school with Fidel Castro, participated in the Cuban Revolution, and later worked with Che Guevara as the top government official in the new Cuban government. Equally amazing is Geronimo's father, Im Chun-tek, who took the initiative to collect funds from his friends in Mexico and Cuba in the 1930s and 40s to support Korea's independence movement against Japanese invasion force. For this effort, his name appears in Kim Gu's autobiography, 백범일지. So it was a kind of experience that really impacted my worldview, and because I was so convinced that their story has the power to move us all, whether you're Korean living in Korea, America, or anywhere else, or anyone that can humanize and identify with the immigration experience. So I decided to make a documentary about Geronimo and other unsung heroes in Cuba. And with your help, I am committed to sharing the important legacy of Geronimo Lim. Thank you. Well, little did I know, I made that video 7 years ago in an attempt to fundraise for what I thought to be a 20-minute YouTube clip, turned into a 3-year documentary journey following the footsteps of Koreans in Cuba. My parents thought I was crazy because I thought I was taking maybe 6 months of a sabbatical from practicing law. After 6 years, I never returned to practicing law. So came Geronimo after 3 years of labor of love. It opened in theaters in Korea, and now it's widely available also on streaming sites. It's on Apple TV, Amazon Prime, and YouTube, so feel free to check it out. But to get to the essence of the talk, diaspora, as many of you guys know, stands for traditionally, historically, Jewish people, right? Living outside of their Palestine land and being spread apart for over 2,500 years. But now in social science, it refers to any ethnic or cultural groups that live outside of their homeland. So I'm going to apply the term diaspora to describe the spread of the Korean people across the world. And in order to do that, I want you guys to indulge with me as I talk about my trivial personal journey and my identity crisis that led me to different places. And this is an order in which I came to terms with my own sense of identity, going from Korean to Korean American to a member of diaspora to a global citizen. So here I am. I was born in Minneapolis when my dad was getting his PhD degree at the University of Minnesota. And you see that little boy waving hand at the camera, that's me, where I was too young to conceptualize what identity meant. So my identity crisis or my lack of understanding starts from being Korean. I went to Korea when I was 5. You see, again, a little boy in elementary school staring at the camera. That might be the first image that comes to you, but upon a second deeper look, you would quickly realize that all the people, all the students around me are more or less, we look the same, right? We dress the same, we probably from 10 feet and beyond, it's hard to tell which one is which. If my mom came to school to hand me a lunchbox, she would have a hard time finding me, I would assume. I'm telling you this because when I was in Korea, I don't think I really questioned what it means to be Korean. And I'm sure many of you who came to the States at a later age can agree with me that you probably never questioned your Korean identity when you were living in Korea. Why? I did what prudent scholars would do and did a research on how diverse South Korea is in the world. And I did a Google Wikipedia search and came up, saw a list of 154 countries based on their ethnic cultural diversity level. Can you guys guess roughly where South Korea ranks out of 154, 53 countries? Number 1 being the most diverse, and the last being the least diverse. In other words, most homogeneous. country. Take a wild guess. Where does South Korea rank? 150? It's lower than 150, believe it or not. Yeah. 80? No, I mean lower, as in it's not higher. 153, bingo. Yes. So there is only one country below South Korea. Can you guess where? Yes. Or 159. Yeah. This is the actual statistics, easily searchable online anywhere you go. Mind you that this is a statistics that came out 10 years ago, so I think Korea fares slightly better now, but still they're the bottom 5, even in 2023. So what does that say about the diversity and identity? Identity, as you guys know, is a relative concept, right? If identity alone doesn't exist, it exists in relationship to your surroundings, right? It exists in relationship to the environment in which you are. So, in other words, and I'll ultimately get to the concept of diaspora, but allow me to get there. Living in Korea, I never questioned my Korean identity, was my Korean identity. But things became interesting, and I think this is rather more relevant for the discussion of today's, which is what does it mean to be Korean in the US? As I alluded to, I went from being a member of the majority of the most homogeneous country in the world to a member of minority all of a sudden. In Korea, it never occurred to me that my skin color or my cultural, linguistic, ethnic background would have me question my existence, right? Walking down the streets, no one saw me differently because I was a member of the majority, but things changed when I came back to the States. I had to internalize and interpret what it means to be an ethnic Korean. I thought I had two choices. One being, let me uphold and respect and be dignified of where I come from and expect other people to respect me as who I am. Or second, let me renounce my Korean identity altogether and try to assimilate and become as quote unquote white as possible. I'm sure many of you guys face this. If not you, maybe your children probably goes through this at some point in their lives. All until I went to college and learned about the 1992 LA riots. I'm going to illustrate a couple of videos that showcases why the 1992 LA riots or uprising was so important in the formation of the Korean American identity collectively. It says 1991, March 3rd. In the interest of time, I'll talk over the video. An African-American man by the name of Rodney King was pulled over on the streets and soon surrounded by 16 cops. He was beaten almost to death. Mind you, this happened 32 years ago. And when, I'm sure many of you guys remember when Rodney King incident broke out, the reaction to watching such a viscerally violent images on screen spurred a movement. The one like in the aftermath of George Floyd, we saw the BLM sweeping all over the country. And one can argue that in the beginning, the discourse was rather in the right direction, right? It was all about systemic discrimination, police brutality, inequality in the US. But soon thereafter, less than 14 days later, something happened that shifts the discourse of race relations in Korea. And that's Latasha Harlins' case.
15-year-old Latasha Harlins was shot and killed by store owner Sue Jadu. Du claimed Harlins was stealing a bottle of orange juice when she confronted the teenager. The store security cameras captured the incident on videotape as Harlins repeatedly hits Du, who takes a gun from under the counter. Du claims she accidentally pulled the trigger, killing the teenager. Members of the black community charged the shooting was racially motivated.
What I'm about to say from now on is not an opinion of my own, but from a number of Korean American scholars who have studied these two cases in relationship to LA riots. They say a lot of mainstream American media, in particular US News, LA Times, CNN, and so forth, took the second case and they played LaTosha Harlins being shot to death by a Korean merchant over and over in loop for months and weeks and months to come. And they started highlighting the Korean-Black relations in South Central and Los Angeles over and over, amplifying this issue. So all of a sudden, the discourse became less of systemic discrimination and police brutality. It became more of a ethnic fights between two groups. And a year passes by, 4 police that were charged with police brutality, assault, and battery were tried in the court. And what happened? Were they found innocent or guilty? Innocent. And soon thereafter, this happened.
Let's start rolling some of the videotape. We were in an area right outside of Koreatown. There are a lot of Korean businesses in that area, and here we go. Once again, we got there just as this market was starting to be looted. Look at these people pouring out of the shoe store. You gotta wonder what's going on in these people's minds. You wonder what's going on inside these stores? Well, we took some shots here.
Get out! This is America! Get out!
Illegal, they don't care, but I'll tell you what happened moments later. The Korean merchants and store owners who own that shopping complex, 3 of them were holding guns and they just started firing. They actually pulled out loaded guns, but their bullets flying all over.
Many of you guys may know, but over 3,000 Korean American-owned stores, liquor stores, laundry stores, and so forth were burned down to ashes. Most of these stores were uninsured, and they never ended up getting compensations to this day. Many of you guys know who the districts of LA know that there's Koreatown, which is above kind of South Central, and next to Koreatown there's Hollywood and Westwood, Beverly Hills, Bel Airs, and so forth, right? You might wonder, where did all the police go? For 72 hours since the verdict came out, all the police force were placed next to Beverly Hills, setting up barricades at the entry point so that the rioters wouldn't advance to that level. And from far distance, they saw Koreatown burning down to ashes, literally speaking. I told you earlier, let me go back to the identity crisis. I was kind of lost, right? Trying to decide whether I should become more Koreanized or Americanized as soon as I arrived here. And there was a moment in which it completely transformed my life, and it was attending a seminar led by this legendary Korean American journalist by the name of K.W. Lee. Because I was a film major student at the time, I was carrying around my camcorder and filmed him as he sat here in this kind of setting. And imagining a bunch of you guys are college students, he was just dropping F-bombs saying, "You guys little spoiled brats, you think you're going to college, you think you're all great and all whatnot, but you guys are here because of the sacrifices and the silence of your parents." And then he started tearing up. I was so profoundly moved by that experience, I started filming him. I'm gonna share that moment with you from now on. And this happens to be an opening of my new documentary, Chosen, the trailer of which you'll see later. But let me just play that for a couple minutes.
You, Saigu, represent for the first time that the children of Saigu are the only one who came to help. You are the first and last line of defense for your parents. as children of Mama Rosa Parks was the first and last line of defense for blacks in the South. Remember that. That's the only lesson I want to give you. You have to define your destiny in your own terms. You know, when you had a 30,000 demonstrations in America, it's the largest fucking demonstration in America.
다른 커뮤니티하고도 좀 더 협조해서 이 문화의 주류 속에 빨리 우리가 들어가서 좋은 미국 시민의 일원이 되기를 바랍니다.
4.19 폭동이 있기 전까지는 우리는 한국 사람이었어요. 미국에 사는 코리안이었는데 그게 아니라 이제는 코리안 아메리칸이 되어야 되겠다라는 생각들을 다 하게 된 거죠.
They're carried out by your parents who don't speak a fucking English. And you guys pretended it. That's when I will revolt again. I feel the free American.
K.W. Lee, he argues that prior to LA riots, uprisings, 4.19, we were Koreans, just Korean immigrants living in the US, but after which we became Korean Americans. And when he said, I became Korean American in the aftermath of learning 4.19, I felt like I also became Korean American at that moment. It was just almost like a spiritual religious experience for me. And what does that mean? You know, prior to 4.19, a lot of Koreans came to America for American dream, right? And oftentimes it was equated to financial stability or sending your kids to good schools so they can become professionals, lawyers and doctors. But after 4.19, they argue that the very definition of American dream changed. It meant we had to participate civically and politically, that our professional choices has diversified, that we wanted to become a part of the larger responsible American public. And so our psyche changed in a lot of ways, right? We are no longer money-making sort of immigrant generation. We became a part of the larger fabric of America. So I thought that was it. I thought, okay, I found my identity, and that's it's no longer going to trouble me. But I was wrong, because the final stage, diaspora, I went to China right after my college years, and I ran into a lot of Korean ethnic Chinese people for the first time. My friend, one of friends that I befriended, his name is Il-soo. He's a third-generation Korean ethnic Chinese. One day he pulled me aside and he asked me if I knew a fruit called apple pear, 사과배. And I said, no, I don't know what it is. And he says it's a genetically engineered fruit only produced in northeast China. And he said, traditionally and historically, we Korean ethnic Chinese people have compared ourselves to this fruit, apple pear. And I said, why? And he said, it's because we're neither fully apple nor fully apple or pear, right? We're neither fully Chinese nor fully Korean. And then that struck with me. I thought, okay, not only I or a lot of my Korean American friends born and raised in America go through the sense of dual identity crisis. In essence, anyone who lives outside of their own homeland, where they're a majority, has to at some point go through dual, if not multiple, identity crises. I ran into a lot of North Korean defectors during my college years through my activities at LINK, Liberty in North Korea. And they too told me the same thing, that, Joseph, I feel like I'm neither fully North Korean nor fully South Korean. I feel like I'm somewhere stuck in between. My Korean German friends also shared similar sentiments, and so did my Korean Brazilian friends, and even South Korean African friends, and also better known, the Korean Russians, CIS Koreans. So all these things, encounters, serendipitously or on purpose, I always ran into Korean ethnic groups in different parts of the world, and this all happened before I went to Cuba. So imagine when I went to Cuba for fun and hopped into a taxi, only to soon realize that the taxi driver is fourth generation Korean. I thought if there is God, God is definitely sending me a sign that I need to delve deep into this concept of diaspora and try to really figure the hell out of what it means to live as a member of diaspora around the world. So I got obsessed with the idea of diaspora. And I think my identity has elevated from going from Korean to Korean American to a member of the larger diaspora. So why don't we start? So I want to share one video from my first film, Geronimo, in which a Jewish rabbi talks about his understanding of Korean diaspora, or just diaspora.
Start with the idea of diaspora? So the heart of diaspora is pain. The idea that you can't live in your ancestral homeland, that you can't be where you want to be, and perhaps you can't practice a religion or a culture in the way that you otherwise would. But what results from the pain is innovation. The idea that you can change some of the traditions and adapt them and modernize them and make them relevant wherever you are.
Para mí yo soy coreano, yo no soy cubano. Para mí yo soy coreano. Y me muero siendo coreano. ¿Comprende? Porque la única patria que reconoció mi padre y mi madre.
나한테 한국어 좋지 않아요. 그렇지만 매일 한국어 공부하고 있어요. 한국 개그맨 사람입니다. 알아요. 그렇지만 난 한국 사람입니다.
Could you read the letter from your grandfather?
Ya. La patria. Patria es el legado de abnegación de nuestros antecesores y la ofrenda de nuestros mártires. Es la inspiración de los que sueñan un mañana mejor y un futuro de hermandad. Su concepto va más allá de las fronteras geográficas. No se limita a los que nacen en un lugar determinado, ni se sujeta a las normas políticas de un nacionalismo egoísta. El sentimiento patriótico debe fundirles a la esperanza y al clamor de los desposeídos, de los explotados que aspiran y luchan por un mundo mejor. La patria es la dignidad y el honor de los que saben merecerla.
I just have one more video, but I just want to focus on, again, the diasporic essence, which I believe to be not of an ethnic or national or geographic connection necessarily, but moreover, it's one of a universality, diversity, inclusivity, and humanism, which I think America aspires to be, and Korea at some point has to reckon with being such a homogeneous country as of now. And in that spirit of diasporic narrative, I completed my next film, Chosen, just last year. Also opened in theaters at the end of last year, and which is also available on some streaming sites here in the US. In 2020, I followed 5 Korean American candidates, then running for US Congress, 4 of whom were elected, but I follow primarily the one who doesn't make into Congress, which is David Kim in the middle. And I am going to conclude my talk by showing a short trailer from Chosen.
Right there. This is 100. So should we do it here or should we do it there?
Never before have there been 5 congressional candidates of Korean descent running at the same time.
My Korean name is Sunja. You think about my existence being part of a national tragedy, the discrimination and the stigma, right? There was stigma.
I'm forever grateful for this country that gave me the opportunity to realize the American dream.
My both parents fled from North Korea communism. I'm running because I want to work with you.
My story as a Korean American story can be fundamentally an American story.
한인타운이 역사적으로 한국인이 당선된 분이 한 명도 없습니다.
Yeah, so David, he was so popular. He was like best friends with all the girls.
데이빗 김 후보는 아직 한인 사회에 널리 알려지지 않은 신인 후보입니다.
저희가 너무 프로그레시브를 해서 이 후보는 안 될 것 같다. 아마 한국 분들이 그렇게 생각을 하셔서
본 어게인 크리스찬이 되라. 나는 공화당이라는 걸 데이빗이 알아요.
With my parents, I always wanted to be truthful with them, but I couldn't ever muster up the courage.
Thousands of Koreans working in South Central and Koreatown lost businesses they took years to build.
Koreans were fighting because police was not there. That's when our community really woke up and said, we need representation.
Nearly 3,000 hate crimes are reported against Asian Americans across the country.
The government does nothing for us. It's time for them to do something for us.
These young people, they have so much freedom and they don't know what they have.
This will be the most consequential election of our lifetimes. It's not just the future of America that's at stake, it's the future of the world.
I just found it offensive. I did reach out to the White House and I told them, why are you doing this?
We transcend the partisanship when it comes to serving our communities.
We can volunteer and fight for what's right. That's the America we're fighting for.
Thank you for your attention and happy to converse more with you. Thank you.
Presentation. I think the audience are ready for questions.
Thank you so much. That was inspiring. At the same time, I really enjoyed your the previous film.
Heronimo?
Yeah, that
Thank you.
was great. So
Appreciate
that was
it.
very inspiring as well, and really appreciate it. This is just a personal question,
Sure.
actually. You said something about the Korean, and then identity slowly changed to Korean American.
Mhm.
And when I went to Ukraine, and the taxi driver at the time was a Korean Ukrainian.
Wow.
And his father, his ancestor from North Korea,
Mhm.
and went to Vladivostok.
Wow.
And then Stalin moved them
Mhm.
to Central Asia. And so from Uzbekistan,
Mhm.
or back then it was Russia, Soviet, and then moved to Ukraine. And he said, so you're Korean? And he said, no, actually I'm Ukrainian Korean.
Mm.
So when you go to Russia, and then people say, they said the collectivity, the collectivism first,
Mm.
and then you talk about your particularity. And so it's kind of like interesting that how we usually say we're Korean American, Chinese American, Filipino American. So there's a particularity that comes first, and then on to the secondary is American. And to them, it's they say, no, I'm Ukrainian, but I am Korean. Yet they retain their Korean identity in various ways. So do you think, if we were to claim ourselves to come here as we're American, as soon as we just landed here and we claim ourselves American, and then say that we're Korean, do you think that's going to change our perception? And just a personal question.
So I don't know how much of our claim of our ethnic identity first, followed by the larger American identity, is as a result of other ethnic groups referring to themselves as African Americans or Native Americans and so forth. But semantics aside, what do you think is the difference between identifying as the collective group first and then spinning off with their ethnic culture? What do you think is the difference between those two self-reference?
Well, that's the way that I was thinking because of this is a
collective
thank you.
society.
It's more like at the time it was a totalitarian regime, communist.
Yeah.
So you are collectively speaking, you're part of us. So give that kind of assurance that you are there, and then you can kind of express your ethnicity afterwards.
I see. Then I would argue almost that the place where that guarantees full individual freedom and giving you the freedom to refer to yourself with the ethnic identity first is probably a freer society to begin with. Can we at least agree on that page? If so, what difference does it make? I think it would depend on the national narrative the host country places upon individuals. Are they free to exercise their ethnic identity as much as they want? If the answer to that is yes, then by all means, I'm completely fine with calling myself American of Korean descent. In fact, a lot of my scholars, some scholars, more other activists, refer to themselves not as Korean Americans, but as Americans of Korean ancestry or descent. And I have no qualm with them, because essentially I think we're trying to get at the same thing. But I would think that it would depend on the context in which one decides to call themselves collectively first, and then their ethnic background. Yeah. But thanks for a great food for thought. I'll munch on this for a little bit too. Yeah. Thank you. Yeah.
So I don't know if I could phrase the question clearly, but it is something that I have been trying to grapple with. So in this society, we've been talking about a lot of a lot of buzzwords like a pluralism, the compound word, Korean Americans, Japanese Americans, and so on. And I understand that I think there is that deep heritage that we all carry and we all care and we all want to pass on. The question that I have been not only, just from today's point, that I have been trying to get a sense at is, as an American, how can we make our country that has a cohesion and has the unity? And sometimes I feel that is probably a much more important topic than one as an ordinary American would think. For example, when it comes to the security, when it comes to many important at the national level issues, I think it comes down to, do I recognize myself as an American first, or as an hyphenated American, or rather to identify myself to wherever your ancestral home is. So it is something that I'm trying to, get a better understanding. Does that make sense?
Absolutely, yeah. It's difficult. That's why I think I'm ultimately trying to advocate the concept of diasporic consciousness, which is a concept that not only embraces multi-identities that you're consist with, but even transcend and ultimately work not for the national interests, but for the benefits of humanity, right? But in order to avoid making it sound too abstract, I thought of one name as I was listening to your question, and it's the name of a Korean American Washington State Senator, Paul Shin. He's I think 3-4 term state senate, who's widely respected by the Korean American community and the mainstream America. But he shares this one episode from I think 10-20 years ago where Paul Shin could have been the first U.S. ambassador of Korean descent to be sent to the Republic of Korea. So when the State Department was vetting different candidates, I believe he was one of the 2 candidates, finalists, who could have been appointed to become the first U.S. ambassador to Korea, who comes from the Korean background. Now is Sung Kim. But one of the final questions that the State Department employees posed to Paul Shin then was, if South Korea, heaven forbid this happens, South Korea goes into war against the U.S., whose side are you going to be on? And just for your information, Paul Shin is a Korean War orphan, right? He was picked up by U.S. military personnel shortly after the war, and then he was educated here. He served in the public service for over 4 decades, I believe. When he heard that question, he claims that he closed his eyes for dozens of seconds, and he started thinking about how after even 4 decades of service to the American people, they still regard him as foreign, as an alien, right? Whose loyalty could not be fully trusted. So he claims that he opened his eyes and posed them the same question, which was, America is like my father in the sense that it gave me opportunities, it educated me, it taught me values, whereas Korea is like his mother, where it gave him life, culture, and taste for food and appreciation for warmth, right? He said, if your mom and dad gets into a fight, whose side are you going to be on, right? And then he walked up, and then he just left the room and declined to take the position, right? I found that to be a very powerful example of how can we choose, right? Obviously, I'm an American citizen. I vote in the U.S., and America will be my first place of loyalty, allegiance, if you would ask me that. But it's more nuanced. It's more complicated than just that, right? And I don't know, maybe this is a dangerous or controversial example, but I think a lot of people, especially Koreans, they like to often refer to the Jewish people to see how after thousands of years, they still bother to retain their sense of identity through religion or other customs. And I'm not making value judgment. I'm not saying that's good or bad, but is there some beauty in being able to pass down the collective memories of where you come from? And I think that's a question worth having at some point. Yeah.
Thank you so much for your wonderful talk. And I will be asking question for my son. My son is 13 years old, and he is not at the stage of this kind of identity crisis yet, but he will soon to be. So my first question is that what kind of resource or what kind of things that I can be equipped if he gets to the point of this identity crisis? And the second question is that you mentioned about I don't know if it's supposed to be the final stage, the global citizen. So is that the direction that we should all aim for, or is that the destination?
I think you can be equipped with both of my films first. Kidding aside, I don't have a kid yet, but I'm sure I'll have to grapple with this question. I'm a newlywed. I just got married. My wife is sitting in the back. Thank you. But well, it's a difficult question, right? Remind me the second part of your question. That other than global citizen. So like global citizen, what does it mean to be a global citizen, right? Often it's a lofty ideals. I think we ultimately all want to be a humanist, be a cosmopolitan. But I think in the current political context, saying that globalism is important or you have to be a globalist also connotes a lot of elitism, because not anyone can afford to become a globalist in a lot of ways. But so the challenge that I have with propagating or advocating for globalism is the sense of, then where do you get the moral philosophical foundation to become a cosmopolitan? For me, the answer to that question was becoming a diaspora first. In fact, there's a quotation by a French philosopher of the 12th century, I think his name is Hugh of Saint Victor. He says that he divides people into 3 categories, and this is my final words. He says, those who find their home sweet and tender is only the beginner. Those who find comfort in anywhere they travel to is only mildly mature, referring to the globalist or cosmopolitans. He says, those who find anywhere they go and feel foreign is the most mature person. And I know it's a loaded statement, and we can decouple this for days, but there's something about this diasporic consciousness, I think, that's so powerful, that has the power to empathize with their neighbors and to feel hospitable. I think only diasporas can do that, and I think ultimately diasporas are the future of both America and Korea for a number of different reasons. So I'll leave you with that. That's okay. Yeah.
Chelsea, do we have any question or comments from the virtual audience? No, okay, not yet. I think we have 1 or 2 more questions. Okay.
Hi, thank you for the inspiring speech. I actually almost cried a couple of times after seeing the screen. My question is, as your identity was evolving, I would say it has evolved. As your identity was evolving, did you feel that the universe or the world was changing according to your changes? So did you feel any people treating you differently because you started seeing yourself differently?
I think so, because a sense of belonging, my sense of belonging and my sense of affinity also expanded, right? When I only considered myself to be Korean, I felt very foreign when I came back to the US. I couldn't mingle with my, I guess, Korean American peers and whatnot. But once I realized what it means to be Korean American, that it's still an evolving definition, that I can also contribute to that collective definition of what it means to be Korean American, I felt very empowered. I felt like there's a larger community that I can belong myself to. But same thing happened when I discovered the concept of diaspora. I felt like my sense of belonging also expanded exponentially, because now going to China, no longer are the Korean ethnic Chinese on their own. I feel like I'm also part of their narrative. When I ran into Korean ethnic Cubans, I felt like Cuban history or their current affairs also meant very personal to me. I think currently, right now, what I'm going through is this idea of Asian American identity. I feel like I'm learning what it means to be not only a part of a Korean diaspora or the Korean American community, but part of a larger Asian American narrative. I think it's evolving, especially in the aftermath of Asian hate crimes. And it's been a bit challenging, because how do I then cope with my ethnic diasporic identity versus the larger Asian American identity narrative, right? It's a parallel track. I think I need to be inclusive of both and embrace both, but that's where I stand currently. I'm at a crossroads of that. Yeah.
We might have one last question. I think it's okay to close this session. Thank you so much, everyone. Today's lecture, I hope, provide an opportunity to further encourage the public discourse on U.S.-Korea alliance in humanity, and contribute to bring about ideal alliance between 2 countries. Thank you so much, and it's a time for reception. One more.
I think if I could get a pardon from Joseph, that there is one more person standing between the last presentation and our reception. And so please welcome Mr. Jong-Hong Kim, Director of the Korean Cultural Center, for the closing remarks.
So Thank you very much for your warm welcome. And my name is Jung-Hoon Kim, the director of Korean Cultural Center in Washington, D.C. And it has been a fascinating and inspiring day today. So I'm so pleased to be in charge of the closing remarks in this wonderful symposium at this marvelous place. So we have had a tendency to celebrate and commemorate the 70th anniversary of US-Korea alliance from the perspective of the politics and the military. However, today, it was a pleasant surprise that was satisfying our intellectual curiosity, tracing US-Korea alliance through the lenses of culture and humanities, in particular through missionaries, literature, poem, film, and diaspora, and so on. So I firmly believe that this symposium offered us invaluable perspective. In that sense, I'm feeling so honored to be a tiny part of this meaningful moment today. So thank you very much. So I sincerely congratulate and thank each of the presenters for their effort and for their insights. My great appreciation also goes to the organizers at the Korean Library Association and the Library of Congress in the United States, and in particular, the Ministry of Culture, Sports, and Tourism in South Korea on a wonderful cooperation today. Understanding our common humanity and telling these stories remains an essential part of what makes this special relationship so enduring. And the great thing is that there are always more wonderful stories to uncover, understand, and share. Let's go together. Last but not least, I have one advertisement. We, the Korean Cultural Center, Washington, D.C., are currently holding a special exhibition commemorating the 70th anniversary of US-Korea alliance. However, unfortunately, this week is the final week. So I hope and I strongly recommend you hurry up to come to the Korean Cultural Center this week on this occasion. Once again, thank you very much for your participation, the active participation, and thank all the presenters and organizers for your hard work. Thank you very much.